Hi, my name's Gareth, and I used to think I knew what evil looked like. Turns out, it wore my wife's perfume, slept beside me, smiled at my mother's face, and whispered nightmares into her ear when the clock struck 2 a.m. I hid in the next room, just to see if my mother's cries were real. They were. And what my wife said to her that night, it still haunts me. But what shattered me wasn't what she said. It was what the police officer said after he watched the tape. That's when everything, my home, my trust, my sanity, collapsed. You think you've seen betrayal? No, you haven't. Not yet. The first sound that pulled me out of sleep wasn't the wind outside or the heater clicking. It was that old clock again. Two slow, uneven chimes. For weeks it had been stuck on that same hour, like the house refused to move forward with me. I opened my eyes to the faint glow of the hallway light spilling through the cracked door. Marla must have left it on again. I sat up, listening. The night had that hollow quiet I used to like before Mom moved in. Now it just felt heavy. I rubbed my face and looked at the time glowing on my phone. 2:03 a.m., same as always. When I stepped into the hallway, the air felt colder, still carrying that scent of lemon cleaner Marla loved so much. Everything looked spotless. Her doing. But even perfection can start to feel wrong when it's too constant, too deliberate. The old clock on the wall clicked, one beat off rhythm. I pressed my palm against the wallpaper. There it was again. A voice, faint, trembling. My mother's. "Please, just let me sleep," she whispered from behind her door. Another voice answered, soft but sharp as a knife. "You should be grateful I haven't sent you away yet." My body froze. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined it. Maybe Mom was dreaming again, confusing things. Maybe Marla was helping her back to bed. But the tone didn't belong in kindness. It carried something cruel under its breath. I leaned closer, afraid even to breathe. There was the sound of fabric shifting, a drawer sliding shut. Then silence, just the clock ticking again. I took a step back, my heel brushing against the hallway rug. The soft noise broke the quiet, and my chest tightened like I'd been caught spying on my own life. I stood there longer than I should have, trying to convince myself it was nothing. By morning, I'd have to look them both in the eye, drink coffee, talk about the weather, pretend this house still worked like a home. When the sun finally seeped through the blinds, the kitchen smelled like burnt toast and Marla's perfume. She was already up, humming as if she'd never missed a night of sleep. "Morning, honey," she said, sliding a cup toward me. "You look tired." "Didn't sleep much," I said, forcing a smile. Mom sat at the table, still in her robe. Her hands trembled when she lifted the cup. Marla placed a slice of dry toast in front of her, cheerful as a morning show host. "You need to eat, Evelyn. Doctor's orders." Mom didn't answer. She just stared down, like she was somewhere far away. Marla turned to me. "You really need to get that clock fixed. It's keeping everyone up." I almost laughed. "Yeah, I'll handle it tonight." She kissed my cheek lightly, her lips cold. "You always say that." The morning dragged on quietly. I drove to work, but couldn't focus. Every time the phone rang, I heard that whisper again, sharp, deliberate, "You should be grateful." By evening, I told myself I'd imagined it all. Maybe Mom was confused. Maybe Marla's words had been twisted in the dark. People hear things wrong all the time. I wanted to believe that. I needed to. Dinner passed quietly, like every night before. Marla scrolled through her phone, smiling at something unseen. Mom ate slowly, her fork scraping against the plate. I tried to start a conversation, but both women avoided my eyes. Afterward, Marla washed the dishes while I checked the old clock again. It read 2 minutes fast, though I could have sworn I'd fixed it last week. "One day, I'll fix you," I muttered, tapping the glass. Marla looked over her shoulder. "Talking to the clock now?" "Maybe it listens better," I said with a small laugh. She smiled thinly. "Don't stay up too late. Big day tomorrow." When she left the room, I reset the time once more. The ticking filled the silence like a slow heartbeat. I stared at the hallway light, still faintly glowing. Something about that glow felt wrong, unnatural. I should have gone to bed. Instead, I walked down the hall toward Mom's door. My hand brushed the frame, the wood smooth under my fingertips. The air was still again, but the stillness now felt like it was watching me. The clock struck once, then again. 2 slow, hollow chimes. And from behind that closed door came the whisper I'd heard before, calm and icy. "You should be grateful I haven't sent you away yet." I stood frozen, my hand on the doorknob, my pulse echoing the clock's rhythm. I didn't open the door that night. I just stood there until the hallway light flickered, as if the house itself had grown tired of waiting for me to act. I turned back to bed, but I didn't sleep. Not really. I stared at the ceiling until dawn crept in, cold and gray. The next morning, Marla breezed through the kitchen in her usual rhythm, pouring coffee, checking her planner, talking about bills and deadlines like nothing had happened. "We should look at facilities for your mom, maybe next week," she said, sipping her coffee like she was talking about switching cable providers. "For her safety, these late nights aren't good for her, or us." I nodded, didn't say much, just watched her lips move, each word rehearsed, almost too perfect. Mom sat quietly at the table again, pushing her eggs around her plate, not eating. She didn't look up once. I offered to take the trash out, just to step into the cold and breathe something real. That afternoon, I drove to the electronics store on Front Street and bought a motion-activated camera, small enough to hide, simple enough to set up without drawing attention. I told myself it was for peace of mind, just to rule things out. "If I'm wrong," I said under my breath as I unboxed it in the garage, "I'll delete everything and never say a word." By nightfall, I had it mounted discreetly above the hallway shelf, angled perfectly to catch anything near Mom's door. I tested it twice, then again. It recorded in black and white, clear, crisp, cold. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. Marla was almost sweet. She offered to make my lunch for work, reminded Mom about her pills with a gentle smile, even brought home flowers on Thursday, said they were on sale. "The house needs color," she joked. "We're starting to feel like ghosts." I watched her more than I should have. Every gesture, every word felt like it had a shadow behind it. She didn't rush. She didn't lash out. But sometimes kindness wears a mask so well you forget what's behind it until it slips. At dinner on Friday, she laughed at the clock still chiming at 2. "Maybe it just likes the drama," she said with a wink. I smiled. Barely. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in the garage, lights off, laptop glowing in my lap. I plugged in the camera's memory card. The screen flickered, then loaded the hallway footage. 1:55 a.m. Nothing. 1:58. The hallway light clicks on. 2:00 a.m. Marla appears, barefoot, holding a glass of water and a pill bottle. She knocks softly on Mom's door. Enters. There's no shouting, no slamming, just that voice, smooth even. But every word was wrong. "You'll take your pills now, or I'll call the home. This isn't a game." Pause. I said now. The tone chilled me more than if she'd screamed. It was how you'd talk to a dog who wouldn't heal. I paused the video. The image froze on her face. Calm, almost maternal. But her eyes, they weren't looking at my mother. They were looking through her. I stared at the timestamp, 2:03 a.m. I didn't move for a while. I didn't feel angry. I didn't cry. It was something else, a silence that pressed into me like weight. Maybe it was the medication, I thought. Maybe Mom was confused, hard to manage. Maybe I was seeing something that wasn't there. But deep down, I knew better. I kept the video open, thumb hovering over delete, then save. I rewound. There, faint in the background of the recording, the two hollow chimes, the clock, that same broken clock. Two notes, like a signal, like a secret reminder that this hour wasn't safe. I rewound again. Let it play. Two notes. Silence. Then her voice. If I show her this, I whispered, watching the footage fade to black, she'll destroy me. The tiny red light on the camera blinked once, then went dark. But that image stayed with me. It was like a heartbeat that had stopped, a quiet warning I couldn't ignore. For the next 2 nights, I tried to act normal, laugh at Marla's jokes, help Mom with her crossword, talk about meaningless things like grocery lists. Every word felt like pretending not to drown. That second night, I made up my mind. No more half-truths, no more maybes. I would stay awake. Not with cameras this time, just me, my ears, and the dark. By 1:40 a.m., the house had settled into that deep, heavy stillness again. I turned off the hallway lights and sat down beside the vent outside Mom's room. The metal was cool against my cheek as I leaned close. I could hear the faint hum of her oxygen machine, the slow rhythm of her breathing. The old clock in the hallway read 1:59. That minute stretched longer than any hour I'd lived through. Every second landed like a weight on my chest. Then, footsteps. Soft, deliberate, the way Marla always walked when she didn't want to wake anyone. The floor creaked near Mom's door. Her voice came next, quiet and clear, but the sweetness was gone. You don't belong here. You make him weak. My stomach turned cold. Mom's reply was barely more than a breath. Please. I'll be quiet. I promise. Marla sighed, the sound sharp, like a blade dragged across glass. You always say that, but he listens to you and I'm done with that. You've had your time. There was the sound of something being set down. A glass, maybe. And then silence again. I pressed my forehead to the wall, eyes closed. The digital numbers on my alarm clock glowed faintly through the half-open door of my room. 2:00 a.m. It was happening again. Every muscle in my body screamed to move, to throw open the door, to stop her. But I didn't. I bit down on my tongue until the metallic taste of blood spread across my mouth. Pain kept me still. It was the only way to control the chaos inside. When I finally heard Marla's footsteps fade back down the hall, I let my breath out slow. My hands were shaking. I told myself I needed to think, not react. I couldn't confront her with anger. She'd twist it. She always did. The clock ticked again, echoing faintly through the hallway like it was mocking me. 2 hollow chimes. One for what I heard, one for what I didn't do. Morning came like a punishment. Marla hummed softly as she poured coffee, wearing her favorite blue robe. She kissed my cheek and asked if I wanted scrambled or fried. Her tone was light, effortless, as if her hands hadn't just fed venom into the night. Mom sat at the table, pale and small, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't touch her toast. She just stared at the window, as though she could see a world that didn't exist here anymore. I tried to meet her eyes, but she didn't lift them. Marla noticed. "You okay, Evelyn? You look tired," she said, with a smile so kind it made my stomach twist. "I'm fine," Mom whispered. Her voice sounded like paper tearing. I took a sip of coffee. It tasted bitter, metallic. The clock on the wall read but in my head, it was still 2. Always 2. The sound of those chimes clung to me like an echo that wouldn't die. That was the moment I stopped loving her, I would later tell myself. But I still couldn't stop protecting her. I watched Marla laugh at something on her phone. The morning light caught the curve of her face, and for the first time, I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger who'd learned to use kindness like a weapon. I left the table early, saying I had work calls to make. But instead, I sat in the den, watching the clock. Its hands ticked forward, stubbornly alive, like nothing was wrong. I reached up, adjusted it slightly, and whispered to myself, "Not this time." The sound of the gears turning filled the quiet room. For the first time, it didn't feel like fear tightening inside me. It felt like resolve. That night, after dinner, I opened my laptop and slid in a new SD card. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard before pressing record. "This time," I said softly, "you won't hear me coming." I shut the laptop slowly, letting the silence settle. My hand lingered on the lid as if the plastic casing could keep the weight of truth contained a little longer. But it couldn't. Not anymore. A week had passed since I started the recordings again. Every night I reviewed footage while pretending to sleep soundly next to Marla. Her breathing at night had a rhythm, like someone used to keeping secrets. Even in sleep, she never fully let go. Tonight was no different. It was nearly 1:45 a.m. I moved into the living room with the laptop balanced on my knees, back straight, jaw tight. I felt like I was preparing to watch myself unravel. The first few clips were the same slow steps down the hallway, same hushed but sharp-edged whispers from her to my mother. "You're not the queen of this house, Evelyn. You're just a guest." Then the soft closing of the bedroom door. Then morning. Cheerful, tidy, efficient Marla. The perfect performance. But the newest clip froze me. In it, Marla stepped into the frame, just like always. She walked past the camera, then paused. Her head turned, not fully, just enough. Her eyes looked straight into the lens for a split second. One breath. Then she smiled and kept walking. I felt a chill rise from my spine to the back of my neck. She knew, or at least she suspected. That brief glance carried enough weight to pull the air out of the room. My chest tightened as I replayed it, trying to convince myself it could have been chance. A coincidence. Maybe she saw a light flicker. But deep down, I knew better. That morning, while we stood in the kitchen, me pretending to read emails on my phone, Marla reached for the coffee grinder and said casually, "Maybe we should go out for dinner this weekend. Get out of this place a little." I didn't respond right away. I felt her eyes rest on me. Not long, but long enough to make my heart race again. "You're quiet," she added, pouring beans into the grinder. "Something on your mind?" "Nope," I said, letting the word hang. She smiled over her shoulder. "Just seems like you've been preoccupied." I forced a nod. "Work's been a mess." She didn't press. That's what scared me most. She didn't need to. Later that afternoon, I helped Mom back to her room after lunch. Her hands were cold, even with the heater running. I sat on the edge of her bed while she got settled under her blanket. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "You shouldn't make her angry," she said softly. I reached over and took her hand. I already did. She didn't ask what I meant. We both knew. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. I sat behind my bedroom door, knees to my chest, headphones in, one ear listening through the vent. The old clock in the hallway ticked loudly. The sound was no longer just time passing. It was a warning system. 2 a.m. was a place now, not a moment. I counted the seconds. Tick, tick, tick. And then Evelyn's breath. Shallow, shaky, almost like she was crying through her nose. It was the only sound besides the clock. Then Marla's voice. Are you going to start faking chest pains now? Is that your next little trick? I just need some sleep, Mom whispered. Then stop pacing all night. You're like a dying dog scratching at the walls. That was it. Nothing screamed, nothing slammed. But something inside me cracked. The red light on the camera blinked once in the hallway. That tiny flash in the dark felt like a heartbeat. Hers or mine? I didn't know anymore. I sat there for another 20 minutes, listening to the silence stretch thin. When the hallway clock chimed twice, I didn't move. I let the chimes echo through the house. Marla didn't stop them. She didn't even come out to check. It was the first time I let the sound ring. I wanted her to know I heard it. At breakfast the next morning, we were a portrait of civility. Marla passed the butter, humming some tune from the radio. Evelyn sat quietly, her toast untouched, her fingers trembling just slightly as she held her glass. "Did you sleep okay, honey?" Marla asked me. I took a sip of my coffee. It was too hot, but I didn't flinch. "Didn't sleep much," she tilted her head. "You really should see someone about that. You're always so tense." I smiled. "I'll think about it." Her hand reached across the table and landed on mine. She gave it a quick squeeze, warm, confident, calculated. Then she turned her attention back to the butter knife. I helped Mom back to her room a few minutes later. Just before I turned to leave, she whispered, "Don't wait too long." "I won't," I told her. That night, I sat in the dark with the laptop on my lap again. I fast-forwarded through hours of footage. Nothing new, no new cruelty, just the same well-practiced indifference. But my body felt different, tighter, my breath shallow, my jaw locked. I opened the desk drawer, pulled out a fresh SD card, and slid it into the slot. I didn't press record yet. I just stared at the empty hallway feed and whispered, "Every second I didn't stop her, something in me died with her." And I meant it. It wasn't just about Evelyn anymore. It was about who I was becoming. I let the clock ring at 2 a.m. again. This time I counted each chime out loud. I didn't care if she heard me. Just as I closed the laptop, I heard her steps approach down the hallway. She paused just outside my door. A whisper cut through the air, low, sharp, just loud enough for me. "Next time, don't hide. It's pathetic." She walked away. I didn't move right away after she said it. I sat in the dark, palms damp, eyes locked on the door long after her footsteps faded. There was no shouting, no slamming. Just that line. Simple, cruel, calculated. It rang in my head like a church bell muffled underwater. But this time, instead of swallowing the sting, I held it, turned it over, examined it like a broken piece of glass in my hand. Then I got up and powered off the camera. For the next 2 nights, I recorded nothing. Not because I was afraid, not anymore. Because I wanted her to believe I had stopped. I went about my days as usual. I worked from the dining room, shuffled papers in the insurance files I barely cared about now. I cleaned out the gutters, repaired the screen door. Small things, domestic things. The kinds of things a man does when he's avoiding confrontation. But inside, something had shifted. I started watching her the way she had watched us. Marla liked to drink her coffee with 1 packet of raw sugar. Always poured in last, never stirred. She scrolled social media every night around 10, thumb drifting without interest. Her phone password hadn't changed in months. The name of her late cat, plus a year I guessed was its birth. I noted the numbers, memorized the rhythm of her steps on the stairs, tracked her calls without touching her phone. She whispered at night, but spoke too sweetly during the day. The cracks were widening. She thought silence meant surrender, I muttered once under my breath in the garage, pretending to search for a wrench. She never realized silence was how I loaded my weapon. On the 3rd morning, I woke up early and made coffee first. Marla came down in her robe, blinking at the smell. "You're up early," she said, sliding into the chair. "Felt like letting you sleep in." I poured her a cup, smiled, then one for myself. She sipped it cautiously. I watched her. Our eyes met, just for a flicker. Then she looked away, chuckling. "Well, this is nice," she said. Later, at breakfast, the real shift happened. I brought the toast to the table. Evelyn was already seated, shoulders drawn, hands folded like a schoolgirl bracing for a scolding. Usually, Marla plated everything, then left Evelyn's at the edge of the table without a word. A quiet insult, dressed in routine. But today, I walked over and placed the plate directly in front of my mother. Gently, like it mattered. Her eyes lifted to mine, wary, unsure. Marla reached out for the butter knife and paused, just for a second. Her fingers hovered midair, then slowly drew back. She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "Look at you, Mr. Hospitality," she said lightly. I raised my coffee cup toward her, trying something new. It was a small moment, insignificant maybe, to anyone else. But in our house, where every breath felt weighed and counted, it was a declaration. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed, brushing my teeth in silence. As Marla folded towels across the room, the clock on the wall read 10:17. "Do you hear the hallway clock anymore?" I asked casually, mouth full of toothpaste. She looked up, surprised. "You mean that old thing? Honestly, I haven't noticed." I rinsed, dried my mouth. "Yeah, I think it stopped." And it had. That night, for the first time since it all began, 2 o'clock came and went in silence. No chimes, no signal, no alarm. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, and whispered, "Even time knows something's changing." The next morning, the mood in the kitchen was light, almost cheerful. Marla wore her lipstick, the soft mauve she reserved for PTA meetings or church events, and her blouse was tucked in neatly. "I need to take your mother out today," she said, cracking eggs into the pan. "Just a quick checkup." I sipped my orange juice. "I'll drive." Her hand stopped mid-whisk. Just 3 seconds of pause. Then the motion resumed. "You sure? I thought you had those meetings today." "I moved them." I didn't blink. Neither did she. Evelyn was quiet during the ride. She didn't ask questions, didn't even look out the window, just folded her hands in her lap like she was bracing for something. We passed the medical center. Marla said nothing. A few blocks later, she told me to pull over near a red brick office building with polished windows and no signage out front. "I'll just be a minute," she said, adjusting her scarf. Evelyn looked at me. I nodded once. "Take your time," I told Marla. "I'll be here." She got out. I waited until the door closed behind her, then reached over and tapped the dashcam screen. Red light. Recording. She disappeared inside. 15 minutes later, she returned with a white envelope tucked under her arm and a fake smile pressed into her face. "Sorry," she said. "Paperwork took longer than expected." That night, after she fell asleep, I retrieved the footage. The GPS pinged the building. Law firm. Not a doctor's office. Not even close. She was there for something else. Probably had my mother's name on it. Probably had mine too. I copied the file to a separate drive. Labeled it June 12th, Garage Cam Extract, and saved it twice. Then I stared at the screen. I didn't feel fear. I felt cold, ready. And then I waited. The next morning came with a sun that felt too bright, too clean for the mess brewing underneath our roof. I moved through the kitchen quietly, measured, like a man who had nothing to hide, because I didn't. Marla had beat me to the coffee. She was dressed, hair done, lips painted just slightly. That always meant she had an agenda. She slid a stack of papers across the table as I was reaching for the bread. "Sign these," she said, almost cheerfully. "Just a formality. Insurance updates, something about joint ownership on the house. Makes everything easier." I didn't touch them right away. Just glanced down, brows raised, not suspiciously, just tired. "What kind of updates?" She gave a little shrug, poured more coffee into her cup. "Lawyer said it was cleaner this way, in case something happens. You know, if Evelyn gets worse." Her name landed heavy on the table like a stone. I picked up the top sheet. Legal language. Transfer of shared rights. A quiet reassigning of power, buried in polite fonts and harmless margins. I smiled. No reaction. No flare of confrontation. Just a slow nod. And a pen in hand. I leaned forward slightly. Careful, calculated, making sure the angle aligned with the tiny pen recorder I had clipped to the inside of my shirt pocket. Not just audio. It captured stills, too. One by one, I signed. Not because I was fooled. Because I needed her to think I was. When I handed them back, she looked pleased. Not smug. She wasn't that careless. Just content. Like a cat who thinks the mouse has gone still. She reached for her cup. I stopped her with a question that felt like an afterthought. "When did Mom need a lawyer?" She hesitated only a breath. "When she became your burden." The smile I returned wasn't real. It was made of glass. "Then I guess I'm lucky I don't measure strength the way you do." Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. That was how she worked. She didn't explode. She studied, adjusted, waited for weak spots. The rest of the day passed like a dream on repeat. Dishes, a walk outside. I pretended to check the mailbox, watered the same patch of grass twice, but inside I was replaying it. Every word, every calculated tone in her voice. I wasn't just angry. I was mourning something. That night, I sat alone in my study. Not the big office space downstairs. The little one off the hallway, where I kept old recordings and forgotten photos. I pulled out an old DVD, Christmas, 7 years ago. My mother wore a red sweater. Marla smiled without malice before anything had started. Or maybe it had already started. Maybe I just didn't see it then. On screen, we were laughing, clinking glasses. Evelyn was dancing, slowly but freely, in her socks across the wooden floor. I had built that floor, with my own hands. Every nail, every plank, every scuff still etched into my memory. I muttered, "I built this house for love." She turned it into proof. Then, like clockwork, 2 slow, hollow chimes echoed from the hallway. 2:00 a.m. After 2 nights of silence, The sound returned. Not a jolt this time, more like punctuation. I leaned over to the monitor, flicked through the camera feeds, the hallway, the living room, the room where my mother slept. Marla was already moving. I watched her figure glide into Evelyn's room, as if summoned by the bell itself. But something was different. Evelyn wasn't asleep. She was sitting up, waiting. No fear, no confusion, just a quiet, still awareness in her eyes. Then she looked straight into the camera, not startled, not pleading, just present, like she knew I was there, like she'd been waiting for me too. And in that moment, I knew. There was no more time left for collecting evidence, for building the perfect case, for hoping she'd slip up on her own. Narration filled my mind, unspoken but solid. The night she stopped begging, I stopped forgiving. I got up, pulled the external drive from the drawer, the one I'd used to back up everything, every clip, every whisper, every lie. This wasn't about watching anymore. It was about preparing. I copied everything, hid the drive behind the false back panel in my closet, locked it in a box my father once used for war medals. Ironic, I thought. Then, as the chimes faded, I stepped into the hallway. The air was still warm from the day, but I didn't feel it. I moved quietly, past the study, down the hallway, past the corner where the wall always creaked, the spot I'd avoided before. Not tonight. I stood in the open arch between the hall and the main room, and there she was, Marla, just exiting my mother's door, closing it softly behind her like a nurse in a hospice ward. She didn't see me at first, but something made her stop, half turn, her body tensed, sensing maybe, and then she looked, right at me. She flinched, just barely. I didn't say a word, just lifted the camera from my hand and watched her. She hesitated, then walked past me. No words, no apology, no smile. She disappeared into our bedroom. I stood there for a while, in that quiet, holding the camera like a weapon I hadn't yet fired. Then I said it, barely above a whisper. "You've had your hour long enough. Now it's mine." I stood there for a long moment after she disappeared down the hallway, the weight of her steps fading like the end of a nightmare. "You're not sure" is over. My grip tightened around the camera in my hand. For the first time in weeks, I thought I might finally be ahead, but that hope didn't even make it through the morning. I went back to the study just after sunrise, shut the door behind me, and sat down at the desk. The external drive was still tucked where I'd left it, locked away beneath layers of wood, dust, and old family photos. A hiding spot only someone like me would know. The moment I plugged it in, my breath stilled. Empty. Every folder, every file. Gone. No error message. No crash. Just gone. Except for one file, right there at the top. I hesitated, mouse hovering, then clicked. Marla appeared on the screen, centered, perfectly lit, hair brushed, blouse neat, lips painted in that soft pink shade she wore when she wanted to seem harmless. "Good morning, Gareth," she said, voice syrup sweet. "You really should change your passwords." She blinked once, then leaned forward, her smile never leaving her face. The cursor on screen moved to the folders, my folders, and deleted each one, slowly, deliberately. The mouse hovered one last time over the final file, and she looked up directly into the camera. "You can't win a game I taught you to play." The screen faded to black. For a few seconds, I forgot how to breathe. Then something deeper than panic hit me. Shame. Not because I'd lost the evidence, but because somehow I'd let her back inside my head. By the time I stepped into the kitchen, my hands were cold. She was already there, humming softly while slicing oranges like it was any other morning. She looked up and smiled like we were old college friends running into each other by chance. "Coffee's hot," she said, setting a mug at my usual seat. "You look tired." I sat, said nothing. "You okay?" she asked, tilting her head just so. "You've seemed off. Maybe you should talk to someone." She reached for Evelyn's hand, which rested motionless on the table beside her toast. "Sweetheart," she cooed, "tell your son to get some rest." Evelyn blinked slowly. She didn't speak. I stared at Marla, at the perfect show she was performing. The domestic queen, the loyal wife, the concerned caregiver. To the world, she was sunshine. To me, she was arsenic wrapped in linen. I got up before the nausea reached my throat. Later that afternoon, I returned to the kitchen. I wasn't hungry, just restless. The house felt like it was pulsing, like it was breathing against my will. I reached for the coffee pot. That's when I saw it. A folded slip of paper, half tucked beneath my cup. Small, barely noticeable. I pulled it out. Shaky handwriting. Uneven, but unmistakable. I saw where she hid the drive. I stared at the words like they were fire. Mom. It was her. After all, this time, the silence, the flinches, the trembles. She was speaking again, not with her voice, but with courage. That night, I barely slept. My mind spun in loops, doubts creeping in through cracks I thought I'd sealed. What if she's right? What if I am imagining all this? What if I've become the villain in my own story? I almost talked myself out of everything. Almost. But as I helped Evelyn into bed, I noticed something. A bruise. Small, deep purple, barely visible, hidden beneath her sleeve. That was all I needed. Truth doesn't shout. It whispers. And I'd just heard it. When the house went quiet, I grabbed a flashlight and headed for the basement. The air there always smelled faintly of mildew and wood dust, forgotten years preserved in cardboard boxes and rusty nails. I dug through shelves, shifted old tools, wiped cobwebs from the corners. And there, behind a stack of photo albums from my childhood, I found it. A small black drive, labeled with a single letter and number. W1. I didn't wait. I plugged it into my old laptop, praying it would boot. The screen flickered. Then the folders appeared. Everything was there. All of it. But there was one file I didn't recognize. No label, no timestamp. Just a name. Final. I clicked. Marla, again. But different this time. She wasn't performing. She was pacing, holding her phone. Her voice was low, clipped, impatient. "Yes," she said. "Once it's done, the house is in my name." A pause. "No, he won't fight it. He's soft. Always has been. And the mother? She won't be a problem after tomorrow." I froze. The call ended. She exhaled, looked around the room, and smiled. Not sweetly this time, but cold, efficient. The clip ended. I sat there in the dark, lit only by the soft glow of the laptop screen. The basement light above me flickered once, then again, then a third time. Same rhythm as the chimes from the old clock, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I was locked in. I whispered, "She's planning something for Mom." And I ran. I didn't bother to close the laptop. I didn't check the time. I just ran upstairs, taking 2 steps at a time. When I pushed open her door, the bed was empty. I stared at the crumpled sheets, heart pounding, my eyes darting to every corner of the room like they could conjure her back. The window on the far side stood open, its curtains swaying gently in the breeze. Not a gust, just a slow, deliberate movement, like something had passed through minutes ago. Then I saw it. Her phone. Not Evelyn's. Marla's. It was lying on the nightstand, screen dim, still recording. I picked it up carefully, thumb trembling as I tapped the play icon. The video began. The hallway, low light. Marla's voice, soft, sugary, almost loving. "You said you wanted fresh air, didn't you?" The camera followed her as she led my mother slowly down the hall. Evelyn moved sluggishly, in slippers, like she wasn't sure if she was walking in sleep or under someone else's command. I didn't wait to see the end. I bolted out of the room, my bare feet pounding down the hall, each step louder than the last. My hand slammed against the front door, flung it open. Outside, the air was wet with dew, the kind that settles just before dawn. And there, at the edge of the driveway, stood Marla, calm, steady, dressed, like she'd been planning this all night. She was leaning against the car, keys dangling in her hand. The rear door was open. Inside, barely visible, Evelyn sat curled against the seat, arms hugging her knees, trembling. I stepped forward. "What are you doing?" Marla turned slowly, putting on the performance mask like slipping into a dress. "She fell," she said softly. "I didn't want to wake you. I was taking her to the ER." "No, you weren't." My voice was flat, but beneath it, fury simmered. "Then why did you delete the footage?" That stopped her. For a second, no longer. The mask cracked. She tilted her head like she hadn't heard me right, but she had. I kept my voice even. "I know about the backup drive." Marla didn't blink, just stared. Then, with a shift so slight I almost missed it, her face changed. The fake concern dropped away like a curtain, revealing the steel beneath. "Because you were never supposed to see it," she said, her voice sharper now. "You were supposed to sign, play along, be the grateful little son." I took another step forward. "And Mom, what happens to her?" Marla sneered. "What always happens. She becomes someone else's burden." That was enough. I lunged. The keys in her hand fell with a sharp clatter. Her phone dropped and skidded under the car. She pushed back, nails scratching at my arm, but I didn't let go. Behind us, Evelyn's voice rang out faintly from the back seat. "Gareth." It broke me, not in weakness, in resolve. I pinned Marla's arm, keeping her from reaching the phone, and with the other hand pulled mine from my pocket. I dialed. 911, what's your emergency?" "I need police and medical," I said quickly. "Now. There's been an attempted manipulation of a vulnerable adult, and I have proof." By the time the officer arrived, we were on the porch. Marla sat stone-faced in one of the wicker chairs, not looking at me. I was holding my laptop open. The footage played. I didn't say much. I let the images speak, the taunts, the false kindness. The moment she told Evelyn, "You should be grateful I haven't sent you to a nursing home yet." The officer, a man maybe in his early 50s, weathered face and quiet eyes, watched silently. When it ended, he nodded once. "Mr. Lorne," he said, voice low, "this isn't the first report about her." I stared at him. "She's been flagged before," he added. "Other families, never enough to charge. Until now." I looked over at Marla. She was pale now. Her fingers clutched the arms of the chair. Her lips trembled, but her voice still found one last burst of venom. "You think they'll believe you?" she hissed. "You're nothing. Just a washed-up son clinging to a house built on pity." The officer didn't even flinch. "We already do." When they walked her to the cruiser, the sun had just started rising. The house looked different in the pale gold light. Not warmer, not yet, but clearer. Like the lies had been peeled off, and what remained was real. I helped Mom back into bed myself. She didn't speak, just laid there, breathing softly. Her eyes fluttered open once, then shut again. The old clock in the hallway struck 2. This time, the sound didn't send chills. It landed soft, gentle. I sat beside her, holding her hand, and whispered, "You can rest now." A silence settled over the room, not heavy, not sad, just full, like something had ended and something else had room to begin. Later that day, after giving my full statement, I stepped out of the police station. The same officer caught up to me at the exit, holding a sealed evidence bag. "You forgot this," he said. Inside was the drive, but a new label had been added. Witness number 2. He met my eyes. "There's one more video you should see. It's from the same night, but not from your house." I took the bag without a word. Something inside me shifted. Not fear. Not yet. But something told me the story wasn't finished. I barely had time to pour a second cup of coffee before the phone rang again. It was Detective Rowe. "Mr. Lorne," he said, his voice steady but marked with weight. "You might want to come back down to the station. There's one more thing you need to see." No hesitation. I was already grabbing my keys. The ride was short but felt longer. Every red light a drumbeat of dread. When I got there, he was waiting with a laptop open, a flash drive already inserted. "Label says witness number 2, he said quietly. "This one didn't come from your house." I sat beside him. He clicked play. The grainy footage came from a fixed security camera angled across a narrow backyard. A small white fence, a garden gnome, an old porch light with a flicker. Then Marla, walking slowly into the frame, alone, in a robe, barefoot, like some wandering shadow. She stopped under the window, Evelyn's, my mother's. She stood there, just stood. 10 seconds, 30, a full minute. Then she tilted her head upward and whispered something. The sound didn't carry, but the posture said everything. "She did this more than once," Rowe said. "Your neighbor, Mrs. Jensen, recorded this a month ago. She didn't even realize who it was until she saw your wife's picture on the news." I didn't speak. I couldn't. He continued. 3 months ago, your mother filed a report. Said she felt watched at night. We thought it was confusion. Maybe dementia." He paused. "We were wrong." The next stop was across the street. Mrs. Jensen's home. She opened the door like she'd been waiting, wearing a thick robe with embroidered birds, a cane in one hand, nervous smile etched in soft wrinkles. "I didn't want to get involved," she said immediately, as if to defend herself. "I thought maybe it wasn't my place." I nodded. "I understand. But one night," she continued, her voice almost a whisper, "I looked out and saw her. 2 a.m, just standing there under your mother's window. I thought maybe she was praying." That hit harder than anything Marla had said in weeks. Sometimes evil isn't sharp. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it wears the face of someone kneeling in the dark. Back home, the house felt different. Not empty, just still. Evelyn was in her room, sitting up, her back turned to the door. She didn't need to turn around to know it was me. "You knew," she said softly. I nodded. But I needed to see it. For myself. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just stared out the window, voice low. "I used to hope you wouldn't. Now I wish you hadn't." That stayed with me longer than anything. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. Justice, when it arrives late, doesn't feel like justice. It feels like cleanup. That evening, I gathered all the drives, every one of them, the ones with footage, the ones that held silence, the ones that whispered things I could Never unhear. One by one, I fed them into the fireplace. The red light on the camera, the tiny blinking dot I'd once feared, now glowed faintly as it melted. Evelyn watched from her chair. She didn't ask what I was doing. She didn't need to. Maybe now, she said, the house can sleep again. An hour later, Ro called. Marla had confessed. Emotional abuse, financial fraud. She didn't fight it, didn't deny it. The law will take it from here, he said. I thanked him, then sat alone in the living room, firelight flickering across the walls. Narrating your own thoughts becomes habit when silence has been your longest companion. People think closure means the pain ends. It doesn't. It just learns how to live beside you. Around midnight, I walked to my mother's room again. She was asleep, breathing evenly, her chest rising and falling with a rhythm that made time feel honest again. The old clock in the hallway ticked louder tonight. Each second counted. When it struck 2, I didn't freeze. I stood, crossed the room, opened the window slightly. No curtain moved, no shadows whispered. Just night, just air, just peace. I sat beside her bed, leaned forward and whispered, "You're safe now." We stayed there in silence, not the hollow kind, the kind that felt earned. As the sky outside paled into morning, I stood up slowly, walked to the front of the house. The light outside had changed. Not softer, just clearer. I closed the window, looked once at the clock. 2 o'clock, I said. Then, almost smiling, I added, time to start over.